Hi friends, this is Adam Kirtley, chaplain here at Whitman College. This is the sixth week I've put together one of these small reflections. I'll tell you this week I have had a chance to talk with a lot of members of our community who I think are struggling, are suffering a bit from this reality. That's students, faculty, staff, administrators. I think across the board, there are those of us who we consider members of our community who are struggling. One of the things I think that's happening to a certain extent is we're confronted with this the sense in which the world has slowed down a bit, and yet we're facing a real sense of exhaustion, and I wonder if there are ways in which we're struggling to sort of name the fact that interfacing with our work and our academics, and our social interactions through the medium of technology, is calling for a real sense of labor from us, that it's hard to name. It doesn't necessarily make sense on the surface that we would be feeling as tired as we are, but I see the fatigue. I think it's a physical fatigue. I think it's an emotional fatigue as well. I've been thinking about sort of the duality of my reaction to a lot of what's been happening recently. So, for example, on one hand, I'm so desperately missing actual contact and being in the physical presence of my friends and loved ones, even strangers at this point. And yet, on the other hand, I'm also I think really craving solitude. I'm in a household where that's not always easy to come by. Um, I think my relationship to this machine, the technology has allowed me to reconnect with family and friends I haven't seen in a very long time. My college friends had sort of an impromptu happy hour a few nights ago. So grateful for that on one hand, and on the other hand, I'm growing weary of interfacing with the world in this way, and staring at this machine and at this screen. So I think there is sort of mixed feelings about how we're navigating this, and of course everyone's relationship to what's going on is on one hand shared, and on the other hand it's unique. Everybody's bringing their own set of experiences to this one, and I think that it's hard to always predict and name the challenges that those in our worlds might be suffering. One thing I'd say is, despite how I think technology will be reviewed and critiqued by sociologists when this is all done, about how we've related to it in these days, I am heartened by the extent to which many at Whitman are using technology as a way to form community, as a way to establish connection, as a way to sort of look out for each other. It's just there's so much creativity happening right now. I'm seeing game nights and movie nights that are being accessed by people who maybe in other times would have been perhaps too busy to do it, and yet we're coming together in those ways. This week, the Whitman's alumni office is reaching out to folks who have been students here and left this institution, and inviting them to see about how we're navigating these days, how we're staying connected, and look for ways to connect them to our experience. Of course, in these days, so different from what they were experiencing when they were here. But I think that knowing that that's happening helps bolster our sense of wellness. It helps bolster our sense of community. I'm doing a weekly gathering called Spirituality, and I invite folks to make a cup of tea and sort of chat about any issues related to what I call the interior self and spirituality, or seeking or religious practice. And I've found those conversations to be life-giving, and I'm grateful for them, even as I wish that they could be happening in person. This week I came across something on one of my social media feeds talking about anthropologist Margaret Mead, who was this. Apparently, this is a famous story, and she was asked to talk about from an anthropologist perspective, where do you identify the beginning of civilization? And the answer that was expected was maybe talking about clay shards or stone tools, and she said that she believes that civilization actually began around a time where there was a discovery of a human skeleton, a human remain in which a broken femur had been repaired. And she said that in the animal kingdom, if you break your hip or a leg, you don't survive. You're too vulnerable to prey. You're too unable to protect yourself from elements. But there was this moment at some point in human history where someone's leg was broken, and another individual or individuals stayed with that person, carried them to safety, and even in rudimentary ways were able to mend a broken leg. And she indicates this idea of people helping each other is what fundamentally makes us civilized, and certainly it is easy to see so many stories of that these days, again, even in the midst of so many stories of suffering. So it's the duality of our experience that I invite you to consider, and to hold both and of what we're going through, the and yets, the both and. There are multiple sides, and I think it's important when everything feels really good for a moment to not let yourself forget that there's suffering in the world, and when everything feels really hard in a moment to not forget that there's beauty to be found, there's connection, there's community out there for us as well. So for those of you who are continuing to struggle, as I said, I've talked to so many of you this week who are, I'm holding you, I see you, and I hope you don't hesitate to reach out to me. I hope you take care of yourselves and each other, and I very much look to seeing you around soon.